The following video contains spoilers regarding Core Metal of Ressurection. If you haven't seen the movie yet and still have a desire to see it, stop the video right now and go watch it. For everyone else, Core Metal of Ressurection is disappointing, to say the least. And I mean, it's not bad per se, in my opinion. It is perfectly fine, but this movie screams of it was two movies before it became just the singular one. I'm like, this is not well paced at all. It just is like, it's just non-breathtaking pace, and it just stops whenever it needs to more or less explain something. And like, it doesn't help that more or less it kind of feels like it starts in media res when Arc is revived. We know, like, innately it more or less seems like an interesting thing, like, concept and stuff, but when it's actually explained by Kogami, who, for lack of a better term, is just an exposition dump in this film, it's so very just the bare minimum of information. Like, oh, this is what's happening, but now we gotta deal with this. We are never given an explanation about how the king revived, how he revived the Evergreen, considering the fact that most of their medals were destroyed, or how he got all of them back. It's just, there's a bad guy now, we gotta go deal with him, and the pacing and generally, like, condensed feeling of this film kind of just goes over to the cast, because, like, if you are not Hina, Ankh, or AG, your presence in this film is very limited. Like, Goto and Date, while I like the chemistry they still have, are basically just punching bags for the entire film. Chiyoko is just there. Kogami, as I stated, is a walking, talking plot up. And Satonaka, I kind of forgot she was even there sometimes. She just shows up, and it's just... And that goes for the Revive Greed too. Besides Uva, none of them really do anything. After Uva more or less comes back, beaten by AG, he absorbs him and then subsequently absorbs the rest to become a kickbash suit, and that's that. That it's kind of a waste of bringing back actors. They literally could have just done voiceovers, and I feel like not much would be missed. I mean, I like that the actors came back. I always like it that even after all these years, these people are willing to come back to this role, but it feels so minimal. And let's get to the big spoiler about this film. The one thing that it's hard to talk about to someone who had talked about it. AG's dead. Like, not he's kidnapped or something, or more or less in a coma. He's just dead, and more or less being kept. Well, his corpse is essentially being used by Goto. Which, again, does not make things easy because there is Goto and Goto now, and I don't hate the idea that more or less they killed off AG. I don't hate it. I think more or less the stuff that involves like AG and Arc near the climax of the film, as they had their like last little talk before the final fight, is like, in a better film, that would have been like a highlight of what this series, of what these kinds of things can do, like a culmination of everything. Like, I didn't think they were going to more or less just straight out reunite the two so easily. This was never a series that more or less went for easy, in my opinion. So there would have been some kind of Deus Ex angst that existed to ensure that they would not be together. If they were together, it would be for so little time. And like I said, if this were a better movie, this would more or less have been a pushing point. But in this movie, it's just a glimmer of what could have been. And like, yes, for how condensed and rushed it is, this film has moments. Again, the initial reunion between the three feels natural. I feel like every actor here gives the best, even with their somewhat limited material in certain aspects. And more, I feel like Shu Watanabe is able to play a much more... his portrayal of Gota, I think, perfectly encapsulate what a anti-Eiji would be, a more or less the selfless kind of person he is, without like the good nature about him, and sort of like playing off what could have been if more or less he didn't have the and I like the interactions like Gota has with the rest of the cast. Like, the cast hates his guts. The cast could literally not do without him, and the fact that, you know, he's the only thing keeping Eiji alive, but again, this is sort of the thing that makes it feel like this was supposed to be like two movies, because spoiler, I know I said more, spoiler alert, but yeah, he betrays him, but it feels like this was meant to be like the end of one movie that would have led into the next. Like, the first movie would have dealt with, you know, Ankh coming back and, you know, dealing with the return king of. And then the next movie would have dealt with like Ankh versus Gota. Gota and Ankh having to come to accept that unless Eiji would not be, that they would not be reunited for long, like maybe going through the 5 stages of grief. But outside that, he just becomes evil, and there's one more fight scene. And like, most of this film, I could just break down to just action scene, plot dump, action scene, plot dump, action scene, plot dump. Stuff like that, and just ends. They kill Gota, and less the move. Eiji dies, and then Hina and Ankh stare off in the sunset as the credits roll and anything else plays. Like, this is fitting with Eiji's character, in my opinion, and in his self-shown nature, and more or less in a situation where he can more or less attempt to redo his greatest failure. Makes sense. But we're never given much time because of the condensed pace. It's just, we're told that we're given the initial shock, and then everyone has small scenes more or less reflecting on this, and that's it. It just feels like its ambition is also sort of undercut by, again, how little they're given to do what they want. Like, again, like both Gota and the OOs are basically kit bashed of old stuff. Like, you know, they both get like the Tamashi like fangs, the gauntlets and stuff are taken from other suits. So it's, I could be wrong, but I think like the helmet for Gota is new, but everything else is more or less taken from other suits. I think like Burfex and Taja Do Eternity look fine. And what Taja Door represents, I think, is probably the one saving grace in terms of the form. So Burfex is just, it's there. They don't even talk about it. They just bring up that, and then they show up with it, and it just gets its butt. So what? That's it. Like, yes, there's apparently a net movie out that explains about it and brings up its creation, but it's not in the main movie. It's like in an event comic, if an important event happens off screen, I don't care, it's not here. And more or less that's a problem. Telling me to go watch something else to fix the issue in the main thing is not helping it. It's like a band-aid on a giant knife slap. And no matter how good they look, it feels so hollow to a point. And this is just a personal thing, but why wasn't time judged all used for the final fight? It just feels sort of incomplete in my opinion. If that was included, it would more or less kind of be a nice cap off, because like this feels like a reverse of Oza's finale, where more or less it's Eiji Ankh having to say goodbye to Eiji now, and more or less living to more or less hold up that legacy he left for him. Overall, like, the film is perfectly fine. it's not terrible, but at the same time, it really could have been a lot more. Whether or not it gotten, like, maybe an extra 45 minutes to tell a story, or, like, again, a second movie to do so. So, I don't know, but outside of a few glimmers of what could have been potentially the greatest V-cinema movie yet, Medal of Resurrection is just fine. And considering, and more or less the thing is, it's more or less being compared to, arguably, it's connected to one of the best writer series in my opinion, and fine just doesn't feel like it should be in the same sentence as the two. Was really hoping to be a little more positive with this, but yeah, channel, subscribe, hit the button, ring the bell, and see you around.